Okay. We'll call the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission for October 21st, 2021 in order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Rob Jurgel,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Jody Rich here, Richard Brophy,
Absent
Absent.
right now.
Brian Lewis,
Present.
Daniel Rosenberg,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Let it also be known that City Council member Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as Carlos Trejo, the Olivet Planning and Community Development Director. Okay. Thanks for everybody for being here. Sorry we started a little bit late, but we appreciate your patience. And, we appreciate your patience with these Zoom meetings that we're having. We get better and better every time we do this. I know that's sounding like a broken record, but I do think we are, but still be patient. Sometimes there are technical difficulties that we have to deal with from time to time. At the beginning of each meeting, we do have a time for public comments. These are public comments that are related to or that are not related to anything that's on the agenda. We do ask you wait if you have a comment that's specific to an agenda item, that you make those comments at that time. And how we go through this is we at each agenda item, there'll be a staff report. There'll be some discussions amongst the commission members. Then we'll usually call the petitioner or bring the petitioner onto the call here so we can discuss it with him. And then at that time, we'll also ask for public comments from residents or interested people. So when you do, if you were brought on as a guest or, brought on to discuss things, we do ask you state your name and address for the record. We also request that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes to be respectful of everybody's time and so we can get everybody's voice heard. So thank you. And I think we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the election of officers. Carlos, would you give us a little refresher about how we do that?
Sure. Every year, of course, the commission by ordinance is required to go through the election of officers. The election of officers would be that amongst 7 commission members, a motion is made for someone to serve as chair. The chair is responsible for the conducting and the coordinating of the meeting. Then a motion for a vice chair. The vice chair is to serve when the chairman, the chairperson can't serve to coordinate and operate the meeting. And then there is a position for secretary, where someone would make a motion for secretary. The secretary is responsible to coordinate with staff with the publication of the meeting minutes and things of that nature. So, and then to call roll in that cause. So those are the 3 positions. It's the chairperson, the vice chair, and the secretary.
All right. So do we hear a motion for chairman?
Chairman, I'd like to nominate Rob Jurgel for chair.
Well, thank you.
I'll second.
Motion's been made. Are there any other, do we accept other motions? Or
If
if
anybody
there's
else would
other
like
people?
to make a motion for
Are
anyone
there
else?
any other candidates? Being none, do we vote?
Yes. On the motion for assigning Rob Jurgel, Commissioner Jurgel as chairman, Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Rich,
Yes,
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
and I would note that Commissioner Jurgel will abstain since you were nominated.
Congratulations.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now do we hear a motion for vice chairperson? And as commissioner, I can make a motion, right?
Yes.
I'll make a motion for Carol Wagner for vice chairperson.
I second.
Great. Any other
Any
motions?
others? Motions?
On the motion for Commissioner Wagner to serve as secretary, vice chairman, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Rish.
yes,
I'll note the Commissioner Wagner will abstain, and Commissioner Jurgel.
Yes.
Right, and the motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Congratulations.
Next motion will be for secretary.
I'll make a motion for Jody Rich. Jody, if you would like to still continue being secretary.
Chairman, with the second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Any other motions
Jody?
on the motion for Commissioner Rich to serve as secretary? Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes.
I have Commissioner Rich abstain, Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
and Commissioner Jurgel.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously 5-0. Congratulations.
Okay, good. Well, guess we're continuing. this
Congratulations,
slate.
guys. Thank you for serving.
Thank you. Okay, Carlos, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comments.
Okay.
Are there any public comments?
I don't see any as of yet. If there anybody would like to speak regarding to a non-agenda item to address the commission, if you can show your hand, it's usually located at the lower part of the Zoom screen on your monitor, right in the center. It's a raised hand. If you are here for a petition, an item that's listed on the agenda, if you could hold off until we get to the agenda item itself. As of right now, I don't show any hands. If I can just have a second, Chair, just in case. Just so all aware, Chairman, I show that there are 7 attendees, and at this point, there are no hands shown.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll move on to, if someone does have a public comment that's not related to anything on the agenda item, you could send us a text or I believe there's a comment. Is that?
It's
The
not
right time?
active because of the, there's no way to record those,
Oh,
so
okay.
we don't put the Q&A active anymore.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but they can always show their hand, and we'll
Yeah.
make sure they get addressed.
raise your hand at the end of the meeting.
Mhm.
Okay, good, good. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, consent business.
All right,
Carlos?
and Chairman, we have no items for consent consideration. We had a couple of close ones, but none that qualify based on what the criteria is.
Good, good. Okay, then I guess we're moving on fast.
All right.
This is gonna be the big section now. We'll move on to section 6, new business. Item A is 734 Villa Capri Court. Petition type is a site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a 648 square foot indoor pool and 782 square foot of associated flat work. Carlos?
And Chairman, I don't see anybody on the attendee list to represent this application, but it is fairly short and pretty quick. The property is noted 734 Villa Capri Court. It's an interior parcel. There's an existing home with a standard backyard. They're proposing the pool and deck in the rear yard, but the parameters of the pool and the deck exceeded those that are authorized administratively. Matter of fact, when this petition first came in, it exceeded the 10% cap. We had discussions about that, and we'll have further discussions later this evening regarding that. And they did modifications to reduce the overall square footage to exactly 10% of the rear yard area. And in doing so, the pool is still 67 square feet over what's authorized for the inspection staff to approve. And it's over 48, the pool is 48 square feet over, and the flat work associated with the pool is 67 square feet over. Being that it is in excess of those thresholds, it requires a commission review and approval. Here are the square footages that were noted by Ms. Doty in the review. And here's the petition application. Everything else appears fine. The flat work, the pool is all behind the existing home footprint. It's just those small increments that necessitate the commission for me to bring it to the commission's attention. And their staff is recommending approval. And there, one of the conditions is that they would need to provide on-site detention, not a BMP, not a rain garden or anything, but something where they will actually hold site, given that the total square footage exceeds the 1,200 square feet. That's been noted to the applicants. I believe it was Fultron, so they're aware of it. And
Have they decided where they're going to place?
not
that?
yet, no.
Okay. And I assume that's going to be connected to the gutters.
Correct. Well, no, it would be connected somewhere to the, they have the flexibility of either connecting it to the gutters or trying to connect to the hard surface areas to drain into a detention basin of some sort. In this
Okay.
case, it may be associated with the retaining wall we kind of talked about
Right.
right behind the driveway turnaround.
Okay.
And that's one of the interesting things on this is we'll talk about this later this afternoon. The square footage calculations are, as I noted, are 1,400 square feet, 1,400 square feet. Anything over 1,200 square feet requires on-site detention. Between 400 and 1,200 square feet, you have to provide some type of best management practice to address stormwater. And that could be done through a rain garden, planting, a mulch pad, rain barrels, there's a wide array of those. But in a situation like this, and again, we'll talk about this later, the pool represents almost 50% of the coverage here, where the pool in itself is holding water. I mean, maybe once a year is it drained out or so, but we're considering it as an actual footprint and requiring the petitioners to provide on-site detention for that pool area, even though it's a collection, it's a water collecting pit, for lack of a better word.
So are they only responsible for getting the new improvements?
That is correct. Now, they can trade it off in there, but the code says that they only have to do for the square footage of the new improvements.
That's an interesting thing about pools is it depends on the cover too, like during the winter time,
Mhm.
what kind of cover they're going to have. Because there are covers that don't allow the water to go in there that usually have like a sump pump or something sitting on top of the cover.
Yeah.
So, but I probably doesn't really apply to this as much, but when we get into the further discussions.
Yes.
Okay, so there's nobody else to bring on?
No, I don't see anybody. If there's anybody that'd like to talk about this petition application, please show your hand and we'll allow you. I don't see the owner or the owner's representative on.
Is there anyone who wants to discuss this amongst ourselves right now? Have any questions?
I just have one question is why wouldn't they just comply inside the code and trim that thing down by 48 square feet?
Well, the initial plans were actually in excess of that.
Okay.
So they did trim it down. And just to make clear, because here's where it does get confusing. The code doesn't say that you can't have a pool more than 600 square feet. The code says that I and the building inspections department are not authorized to approve a pool in excess of 600 square feet unless the commission consents to it.
Okay.
So somebody could have 1,000 square foot pool or so. But we were kind of kicking around in the office in this, and we did note it to them that if they were to reduce the numbers, I'm looking at two different separate sections that this would not come to the commission, even though the total amount that's in excess is about 100 square feet. But they had already reduced quite a bit in there. I think their original coverage was about, it was close to 1,700 square feet. So they took out about 300 square feet of pool and patio on this. And again, when somebody calls me, I always tell them that the city does not restrict the size of the pool. It only restricts what I'm authorized to approve. After that, I have to bring it to the commission for their review. So.
Okay, any more discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Carlos, do you have the example motion put up?
Yes, it should be the second page.
Here it is.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for community design, site plan review and concept stormwater management plan review for a pool and patio at 734 Villa Capri Court to allow to size to exceed Article 16 parameters as found in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 21, 2021, subject to staff conditions and noted therein.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner and seconded by Daniel Rosenberg. Carlos, will you please call the vote.
We're with me here. When we call the vote, I should have the full commission view set, so I apologize. That does
Yeah.
take a while, and I believe right now everybody on their screen could see that. All right, going in terms of going back on alphabetical order, Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Chairman Jurgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously 6-0.
All right, good, good. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. I'll wait till you get ready, Carlos.
All right,
Item B, 3 Lynn Court, petition types, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a 1,000 square foot residential addition. Petitioner is Paul Schifrin, president of the Creative Renovations and Building Incorporated. Property owner is Grace Allen.
right. Chairman, we have a proposed 1,000 square foot addition at 3 Lynn Court. And again, going back to the way the code is written, on a lot that's in excess of 20,000 square feet, staff has the administrative authority to approve up to 600 square feet. Anything in excess of that, I have to bring back to the commission. In addition to that, because of the square footage being proposed, some type of stormwater controls need to be provided on the property ground. So what I have here for this petition, they did a nice job. Here's the addition. It's a perfect rectangular area that goes over an existing deck. It's 20 by 50. And then you'll note that they provided a flow well basin here just to the left of an existing swimming pool. So this is a property. That addition, again, is part of the building footprint. It is compliant with the zoning setbacks. And to accommodate for that footprint, they're providing a flow well basin system here at what would be towards the northeast portion of the lot. There are elevations of the proposed improvements, and bear with me here. Here, and you should have those in their packet. The elevations are consistent with the residential guidelines in terms of elevation articulations and finishes. And they provided a couple of 3-dimensional views for you, again, that you have as part of your packet. But these represent the proposed improvements. You can see there's windows along the side facing the adjacent neighbor. There's doors and windows along the elevation facing the rear. And then in the interior portion of the elevation, you'll see if this ever changes. Here we go. The doors and windows facing the interior portion of the rear lot. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Again, note that the plans provided do identify that a stormwater system will be provided on the lot, similar to the flow well systems we see for new construction.
Okay, is any questions so far for Carlos?
Just, it's more for my education, Carlos, like we say, provide the storm well. I guess it retains the water, but then how does it disperse?
Good question. There's two ways, and I'm going to rotate this, so bear with me 1 second here, because it'll be easier to to view that. So what happens in the flow well system is that this pipe here is taking in the stormwater that's collected in the gutters, goes down the drain pipe, and then gets piped into these flow wells. And they are these big barrels that are placed into the ground. Before they're placed into the ground, that there's a hole dug up. Within that hole, there's some specialty kind of rock that's put in place. And then the flow well goes in. Now, when water comes in from the gutters into the system, it's like a cup. That flow well slowly fills up. When it gets to its high point or peak, there's a pop-up emitter here and here that will let the water out. At that point, we're having a pretty big storm, and that thing's getting, collecting, a sizable amount. For new homes, you may see multiple of these all put together. But again, you could only, we size it to a specific type of storm. And when it does fill up, either it pops out through one of these emitters here, or if it doesn't fill up during the storm, the water sits here and then it slowly seeps back into the ground.
Reduces the flow back, and then obviously it has to end up
Mhm.
it's reduced large erosion or flooding. So-
Correct. And even in a period where we have these, because the storm characteristics have kind of changed, so they come in this quick frequency. And when that happens, and if it does overfill, again, we would be designing to a capacity that's kind of unrealistic all the time. Now you could add more, but again, for a typical storm, these should be sufficient to kind of handle some of that. And even when they overflow, the goal here is that hopefully the bigger part of that storm has already passed. So this can kind of handle that extra storm water.
We have
And
three
it just
large
delays
storms-
it.
3 large storms in a row that massive.
That is correct.
Storm, but at least it's slow 80% of it.
That's the goal, yes.
Have we ever noticed when they dig these out, whether
Yes.
there is a high groundwater, existing groundwater?
That's always hard to tell. We're getting a little bit better in those observations, especially with when they're putting the foundation and the footings, because a lot of the time that sump pump will go in early in that process, and we kind of know, what the grounds are kind of sort of. We do get a soils report, but it was something I don't think that there was. I don't want to say we're focusing on it more and trying to look at, on some of these sump pumps, as indicators of what to expect. And so far, we haven't had anything where there's been a concern. But we've had some issues in terms of where if there was a void or a pocket within the crossing of where this detention system is, water will find out it's a way to seep through in there. So Jonathan was really good at this, because we found out that if you put the system too close to the foundation, that it could seep in, and then once it gets to the foundation and the compact rock that's around it, and then it just kind of spreads through. We also found out in one situation where a pipe went across, a sanitary pipe went across, and that water was able to find its way to the rock and go through the rock and then run linearly to where the house foundation was. And then other situations, we had one, the infamous one on Sleepy Hollow, where we think that there was a pool that was crushed
Yeah.
and compacted, and that the water somehow got seeps in through the system there, or found a bigger expanse to seep out. So I don't know if that directly answers what you were looking for, but.
No, that's interesting. It was definitely what I was getting at. So it was good. All right, is there the petitioner online?
Yes. Mr. Schaefer, and I'm going to transfer you over to as a panelist, and if you can state your name and your address, and if you don't mind, if you can have your video and audio on and address the commission, and then if there's any questions or any
Okay.
comments you'd like to provide. I can hear you, Paul.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Paul Shaffrin with Creative Renovations and Building. How are you all tonight?
Good. Thank you for asking.
Do you have any questions for me?
Any commission members have any questions or comments? I think it's a very nice addition, so appreciate your time and appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys and your attention to this detail. I did have a question about one of the notes I saw on the agenda where it said that you may recommend additional grading. You don't have to answer that now, but I guess that could come up in the plan review process, or is that something you'll be telling me in this meeting?
No, it would be something that during either the permit review or when we were out in the field for an inspection, if there's something that just wasn't illustrated on the plans that causes a concern.
Okay, well, I don't know if this is promotional to my goal here, but a little bit of trivial information for you. The record rainfall in the whole entire world for 1 hour took place in Holt, Missouri on June 22nd, 1947, and 12 inches of rain fell in 40 minutes.
Wow.
And so a system even like this wouldn't have the capacity to handle that kind of rain. So in regards to what Carlos had mentioned earlier, that in normal rain, certainly this is a way to handle it, but in Missouri, who knows what's going to happen?
Thanks for the comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further, or Carlos, do we have any public
Okay.
comments?
If there's anybody else that would like to speak in regards to the petition, if you can show your hand, raise your hand. It should be located in the lower part of your Zoom screen. And Chairman, I don't see anyone. I recognize everybody that is on there for specific petition items.
Okay, good. So seeing no further comments, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Kara.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition at 3 Lynn Court as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 21, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Kara Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Yes. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, Paul, for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you all for your efforts. Good evening.
Have a good one.
See you, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Carlos, I'll wait till you get ready. Okay,
Okay, the next agenda item is a proposed new home at 90 Stony Side Lane. And this item I would have placed as a consent item. It's a lot meets all the SR district zoning requirements. The proposed house has meets for the most part all the guideline recommendations. And the only caution that I took was the 50% masonry. So therefore, I didn't want to place it in a consent item and assume that the commission would be okay. Similar homes have been approved to this. You have the elevation in your packet. I can get a wider view, but it's it's a home in which if I was asked to calculate whether it was 50% or not, I don't think it would meet that threshold. So you have the elevations in your packet. It has been reviewed and approved by the subdivision trustees, and I believe there's an approval letter that's been included in there. Modifications were made on part for the trustee association. They had asked the petitioner to reduce the driveway from a 3-car side entry to a 2-car side entry, and that was done as we were going through the review of this. And then this is Heather Hill plat number 2, I believe. They're very specific about how their height is calculated. which is less than the city's standard, and the developer worked with the subdivision to get that height to meet their requirements. So be glad to answer any specific questions. There is a condition just for the developer to work with staff to refine that south property line to ensure that that swell area in the back does go to the street. It's pretty standard to what we see in a typical site plan elevation. But what we're finding, you know, as these contours start to get compressed or they start to get become shaped, as you see here, the volumes pick up, and the goal here is to have some type of French drain system or a swell system just to bring it out towards the street as opposed to in the backyard of this property.
Any questions for Carlos? I do think it's a nice looking home, but I do wonder about that garage. It might be nicer if it did have more, you know, stone or brick on the front of it. So I'm gonna throw that out there to the non-engineers. To tell me whether that, what you guys think.
So you're thinking that if there's more brick over on the garage face, that it might look a little more balanced?
Well, it looks balanced right now, but I just thought to give it, you know, with that garage being kind of so pronounced, kind of up front,
Mhm.
you know, that it would be nice. But like I said, I would defer to better eyes than mine.
So are we talking on the west elevation, Mr. Commissioner?
Yes,
Okay.
to see what your thoughts are, so.
You're thinking similar to front of the house to the right, how there's no brick there.
Right,
You know, it's interesting to me that there's a lot of windows for a garage.
yeah.
I usually think about how many windows. Also compared to what's there now. Yeah. It seems like a good improvement. But
Oh, I do. I think it's very nice.
It's a very nice looking house. I don't disagree with you that it probably would add a nice pop, but not anything to me except personal choice, I guess.
I think the house looks great. I think there's a lot of nice windows. The elevations look great. I think it's balanced with the brick all, or the stone all in the middle of it.
I
I'd
don't
be okay
disagree.
with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'd be
get-
okay with it. I think it's a
Okay.
really good looking house.
I kind of like it the way it is.
Okay, good, good. All right,
I'm sorry,
Carlos.
Carol, what'd you say?
I like it the way it is.
Oh.
Okay, Carlos, should we bring on the petitioner?
Sure. Mr. Ivanchuk, I'm going to bring you in to the commission along with Mr. Coates. I'm going to bring you in as panelists. And if you can just state your name and address, and also if you can have your video on during discussions, that'd be greatly appreciated. So I have Pavel Ivanchuk, he's the architect, an applicant for the property, and then Arthur Coates, he's the developer. Gentlemen,
Hello. I'm ready to answer any questions. Do I need to say anything as a prefix to this? Carlos?
Well, we appreciate you being here. Were you going to turn your video on?
they're both on. And,
Oh, they are.
You
Okay.
you can't see that. Sorry about
No,
that,
no,
guys.
that's okay.
Here we go.
That's why I was kind of waiting. We appreciate
There
you
we go.
coming on, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did note that there was one of the comments. No, I think that's with a different house. Yeah, yeah, okay, good, good, good. Okay. Is there any specific questions or comments for the petitioners? Okay, well, appreciate you guys being here, so thank you, but hang on, because what we'd like to do is bring on, see if there's any comments from the public.
Sure.
Right, if there's anybody in the public that would like to speak in regards to this petition application, if you can show your hands, should be located in the lower part of your Zoom video. And Chairman, I see none. And again, I recognize everybody that is on there in regards to one of the petition applications.
I think there's a comment by Missy.
Mr. Trejo, if we could just get clarity with regards to, I'm seeing this more commonly in the recommendations, and I think it's good. Provide a construction, parking, traffic mitigation plan. It must include how concrete material deliveries will be coordinated. Is that to be coordinated with you after this commission, or should this commission approve this plan?
Yeah, the expectation is that when they apply for the building permit, we kind of now discuss the parking in there. This is a little bit more ample street,
Mhm.
but we've changed some of our criteria to allow more of a on parking on some of these properties. It's not a traffic plan, and it's not a traffic mitigation plan. It's solely, we want to get a better understanding of how many vehicles they're going to anticipate, what is the schedule for concrete and things, so we can better coordinate those.
I mean, the real traffic mitigation is just for those people that live in the subdivision to avoid that traffic issue, a problem for them, correct?
No, it's for us to have a better handle on how that impact will have on them, but it's not for the
Okay.
purposes of
Okay.
the subdivision.
Okay, okay.
Because there are some instances or in some streets where the handling of the concrete trucks, if there's an opportunity to give a heads up, we'll try to do that. The other things is that if on a corner lot, sometimes parking is difficult. So we would prefer that they actually rock the front yard and allow parking on there as opposed to on the streets. Yeah. So it's more to make sure that they're coordinated with our staff, and if there's any opportunities to try to work for some solutions, we will try to do so, especially like giving a heads up to the police department if we know the date that the concrete's going to get delivered, or large trucks are going to show up with trusses and things of that nature.
Any other further questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 90 Stonyside Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 21st, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Brian Lewis. Do I hear a second?
A second.
And second by Carol Wagner. Carlos?
Chairman, on the motion, Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rish,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Jurgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you guys for coming on board. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, good. So Carlos, I'll wait till you get ready and we'll move on to 9721 Hastings Drive.
Okay, Chairman, if we're all set,
Yeah, go ahead.
bear with me here. Let me make sure that everybody's visible. We had a petition application for the construction of a new single-family home at 9721 Hastings Drive in the Oak Estates subdivision. It's a interior rectangular lot. It actually butts up to commercial property. The Olivet Center on its north end has access off of Hastings. The backyard is interesting because there is a partial retaining wall along with a screen fence that's part of the shopping center's property. and there's an elevation height. So when we looked at this, the property is below the SR minimum standards. I mean, it does not have 15,000 square feet, and it does not have a lot depth of 150 feet. And you can see in your report what those the reductions are on that in there. But it's a legal lot of record. But being that it is below the area and depth minimum, it requires what we call site plan review. So when we do site plan review, we also have to take consideration into what are the impacts of the proposed improvements, both within the site and its surroundings. Typically, we just do community design review where we're looking at the aesthetics and the site improvements. But in this case, the commission has a little bit of additional authority to make sure that the improvements don't inadvertently impact the existing site itself or its surrounding neighbors. And in this case, we didn't find any, anything that would illustrate that the proposed improvements would have an impact on the neighbors, more specifically because it's not of the full depth that a typical lot would be. We closely look at, well, what does that reduced rear yard have on the adjacent properties? And in this case, their adjacent property is a commercial property that again has a partial retaining wall and a fence on there. So they're at a higher elevation. So these improvements have minimal to no effect on the neighbor. Matter of fact, they're more impacted by the neighbor and the noise and the day-to-day activities that go on back there as opposed to them. So that being said, there are no specific concerns regarding the site plan review. So we go to the community design review. And just in summary, again, the zoning was good. It is because of the guidelines, I have to bring to your attention that there is no masonry that is proposed on the front elevation. But what they do to comply with the overall objectives of the guideline is differentiate materials being used on there. So they're aware that I need to bring up the issue regarding the masonry to the commission, and also they're aware that the guidelines are just that, they're guidelines. And if you can't meet those guidelines that you represent or talk about, what did you do to try to mediate that within your design? The other issue is something we're kind of more looking closely at is driveway slopes as you approach the public street. And in this case, you can see the proposed slope here. On that, it's roughly at about 11%. A typical driveway we want to have at about 8%. We'd like the opportunity to work with the petitioner to try to reduce or find ways to reduce that driveway slope. They're not mounting the house in any way. As you can see, the existing elevations kind of mimic their first floor finish on here at 703.65. So they're a little bit over 702 on there. But these properties, and you can see on the streetscape, there's quite a bit of topography. And most of the change happens on the private property side because the road has to maintain, a specific slope as you go through. So there may be an opportunity to try to gain or reduce that 11%, but in no way are they trying to mound the house and exceed the existing slope that's on the current house in there. But again, I think we'd like to work with them to see if there's opportunities to try to bring that down somewhat. Our goal is always 8%, but this one just may not be one that would be possible in there. Outside of that, they do provide the on-site stormwater detention system on their property in accordance with the design guides, and I'd be glad to answer any specific questions. As you can see, as part of your petition, part of your packet, they did consult with the subdivision association, several members. They had full support of the materials. The subdivision is aware of the conditions, concerns regarding the use of masonry. But in this case, again, they saw that the use of a different material with, it was not at all one type of finish, that they were using the different material as a way to differentiate that elevation. Be glad to answer any specific questions on that. Then of course, I do have the building and site plans individually if we need to look at anything specific or closer. And we do have a representative
Carlos,
online.
if they were able, is there any place to put the extra dirt? If they were to regrade it to kind of lower that?
It is one of those where the house is already kind of set up,
Right.
so the slope is going to be at 11%, trying to bring that down to 8%. If you look at the current plan and their garage elevation, they already have a step down in there. So if we kind of urge them to bring that even further down, they're going to require more steps into the garage. And at a certain point, I think on your third or fourth step, then you get into a requirement that you have to provide a railing
Right.
and a pad, or a sizable pad, I believe, in front of the door. So it starts to get into the garage. Now, from our perspective, that's okay, but it is a design issue, and it's also a cost issue.
Right.
Even if that is mediated, then the back, trying to get out in the back, that you may have steps to go into the house, but also steps to kind of go out. Now, there's always a design way to resolve these things. It's just whether, what is that balance? I'm hoping, from our end is to, as we get closer to the apron, is to get more to that 8%. And this is just to kind of avoid that car from kind of the bumper kind of hitting the crown of the roadway in there. If you look at the Google Streetscape, at least for this specific lot, there's no big, holes or things have kind of hit. But as you go further down in that subdivision, you'll see along the streets some depression or depressed areas where you can see where the vehicles continue to hit as they come down
Right.
some of those driveways.
Right.
Carlos, can we see, has there been any other redevelopment in this area?
Oh, absolutely. This subdivision is probably about 80% that have just been rebuilt with a different variety of developers and housing types. In there.
There's other houses. I'm just curious if all of them have masonry on their houses.
Well, there was something that early on that the subdivision did promote in there. I know further down on Hastings Drive at the turn, there's a full masonry in there, but then there's a lot of homes that have kind of just added on. And that was one of the things, again, they were aware from our guidelines conditions, but also, engaging with the subdivision about that. So.
Well, it is, it is definitely different, without it. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm also glad that they got the subdivision, approval, for that.
Well, I think compared to the two next to it, it stands out, but I'm
It
not
does.
sure. Entire neighborhood is that different. I can't.
Mo-
Is that kind of what you're asking as well?
Yeah, but it seems like most do have, some brick, masonry, stone, when I drive through there. So, but it does add more variety, which is also nice too. So,
At your point, subdivision didn't have concern.
right. Carol, how do you feel about that?
I'd love to see an example of the materials, something to
Get a better
get a
idea.
better idea, right? It's very hard for me to tell from the picture.
I was just gonna start talking about this material. Is there a house that is an outlet that we know of that has that material on it?
Yeah, it'd be nice to know.
Offhand, I couldn't think of one right away. The petitioners might know. I know that they know the area quite well. They're actually residents in there. And if there's something available, I can find it on the Google Streetscapes. I also can upload a Google Earth and take a look at it. It works a little slowly on the main machine, but if
Maybe
If-
even go into the website to just see
Mhm.
what the material is and if they already have any example pictures of it.
Do we know what colors they're thinking about for the house?
the petitioners are available to answer that question, that's not anything that I check in.
Okay, well, I think we got some questions for them.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to transfer over the petitioner and or actually the proposed homeowner on here. And then at the same time, I'm gonna try to access the Google site. So Ms. Solomon, I'm gonna promote you to panelist. And if you can state your name and address, and also if you can have your camera available, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Hello, is everybody able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Great. It looks like my lighting is a little bit off. Just give me just a second. I wasn't able to check it before.
No worries.
Great. So first, I want to introduce myself, and I want to be able to share a little bit about my role here, because I know that it might be a little atypical for this type of meeting, and for the people that you're typically working with here. My name is Elizabeth Solomon. Address as requested is 417 Berkeley Place Court here in Olivet. I do want to emphasize that this is actually my parents' address. We are staying with them when we try to build. They are very motivated to be able to make this work as well. My husband and I, designed and then will live in the home built at 9721 Hastings, which is why I'm the one appearing here on behalf of the project, just as a passion point, to be able to speak to it, be able to answer any questions. And I actually do have material samples here with me to be able to show you, if you're able to see my video. So hopefully that will be able to answer some questions. I did grow up in Olivet. Of course, I still live here now. I attended Ladue schools through high school graduation, so the whole way. I really love Olivet. My husband has very quickly fallen in love with it too. We can't wait to be part of the Oak Estates neighborhood. We are just so excited to be able to be a part of it. We love everybody that we've been able to speak with and meet. And so, to reiterate the points brought up, we have reviewed our plans with all of the trustees and the neighbors, who are all fully on board with our plans. They have no concerns that have been brought up. There are some verbatims that I was able to share that should be in your reports available to you. And I am glad to answer any questions from the board tonight. And I know that Carlos is screen sharing right now the shingle view. So we had ordered a few samples just in case the question came up. So I do have examples of each color that we'll be sharing. Of course, please keep in mind the colors will differ a little bit just with the lighting that I have on here, but it's a little bit of a darker gray, and then it's a lighter gray too. The house is a little bit of a different design, right? A little bit. It's, just a really sophisticated type of material, but we know that the two neighboring houses specifically don't have that, even though a number of houses in Olivet, in this neighborhood specifically, do. For example, just 4 houses down from this one, 848 Payson, if I remember correctly, has very little masonry on it, is a little bit more of a recent build, I believe 2016, if I remember correctly. And they do have the same material that is on their house as well. You can see it as kind of an accent point. And so it's definitely used very widely. An example, if you can see here, to be able to hopefully show a little bit of the texture that it brings, it's very high quality and durable. And then you can see it's a little bit more of a gray color. And so we want to be able to, really complement the neighborhood and really just, add to it instead of, maybe take the attention away from the neighborhood overall. The second color that we'll use, excuse me, this is not actually going to be the same material. We wanted a variation in material, but this is the color. So they're very, just pleasing to the eye. They really go with a lot. We see a lot of, really wonderful growth within the subdivision, within the neighborhood. And we never want our house to be any sort of eyesore there, right? We want it to be able to, really be able to add to it aesthetically and complement what's there already. So, overall, glad that I could show you all that. And I'm glad to answer any questions from the board tonight. Thank you so much. I will reiterate again, my husband and I will be living in the home. I am definitely not a builder or an architect, but I have talked to our team very extensively. And I'm glad to be able to, again, answer questions.
Well, we're glad you came on board, and we're glad you came back to Olivet.
We are too. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
I'm definitely excited to hear your excitement for this home and everything. So it's good. So I don't have any questions. Does any commission members have any specific questions? Ken?
I'm not sure if we shouldn't have some kind of a stone or something to break that house up a little bit. I think that's a lot of siding to put on that whole entire property. That's my feeling.
Right.
I think it's a good looking product if it's broken up a lot and different things like that, but it seems like there's just a lot of siding on the house.
Yeah, I mean, it used as an accent in conjunction with other materials, I think it looks fine. I would really like to see some sort of stone or masonry base at some point. I just want to see what it looks like. At the same time, all of the neighbors seem to be okay with it, so, that, it's a tough call.
Carol, do you have any thoughts?
I just wanted to ask, were you thinking that you'd like to see stone or masonry like just along the bottom? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean,
Like the bottom floor or the bottom like? 4
maybe
feet?
like a stone or brick water table. Just so on that front elevation, you don't have the full height with these shingles.
Oh, I see what you're saying, especially on that front face or the center part.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at too. I'm looking at that elevation, just thinking that that's a lot.
So if I may, this is actually something that we have talked about extensively. To be fair, we've talked about all of this extensively because we really did, come up with the concepts and the design ourselves. So we thought a lot about this, but driven around the subdivision more times than I can count. We were kind of wondering, how do we feel about the look of it, right? We are planning to be in this house for a very, very long time. We have really designed it to be able to, really be the perfect house for us for a very long time. So, do we like it? And then, what do we think, related to other houses that have something like that in the neighborhood? And I'll go back to that 848 Payson example, which is again, 4 houses away from this one. It is not very far. It's just right at kind of at the end of the street. It's very easy to see. What's not easy to see is the masonry. We plan to have, shrubs, plantings. We care about the landscaping and really the aesthetic look. And so overall, we'll have shrubs and plantings around the front of the house. And what we found with the 848 Payson was that if you look at it, you can barely see the stone at all because of the shrubs. And so, we thought about it and we figured, okay, well, if we really like the look, going back to that first point, let's figure out a way to make it work. But we just didn't love the look of stone or even brick. With the design of this house, we really love the way that it's designed now. And since other houses really aren't held to this guideline anyway, and of course it is just a guideline, we kind of wanted to make sure that overall we could still achieve the ultimate goal of that guideline that's in place, right? Which is the varied material. And so we have that here, have worked very hard to balance. We're even wrapping around the shingle look. So, it's not a bare minimum type of effort here at all. We have it wrapped around the sides so that even people looking at the house from the sides will be able to see that variation in material. And of course, people shouldn't really be able to look over the 6-foot fence that backs up to the businesses to be able to see the back of our house. And so we focused a little bit less on that, but really wanted to make sure too that it could be just a really cohesive look that we loved, and that and this shingle is very popular. There are a lot of houses that do really feature it, not just in kind of small areas, but really as a complement to the overall design, like with that 848 Payson and others whose addresses I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
Carlos, could you pull up that? Yeah, just so we can
Yes, I'm
see,
trying to do so.
what
And
we're
what's
referencing.
interesting on the Google Streetscape, it still has the old house. That's how new it is.
Oh.
So very,
I should have taken a picture. I'm sorry, y'all.
I think I can get it here, but just I'm hoping that the Google 3D.
Too bad it gets dark so fast now. I could go for a drive, take you all along and show you all.
Just bear with us.
I did learn a new term now.
What was that?
The Hellcat hideaway.
So I'll show you what I mean when I say that we went through a lot of concepts for this house. I have my binder, if you can see how thick that is. That is all concepts from just when we were sitting around together and thinking, what would we want if we could design the perfect house for us? And so, you know, throughout that process, we ended up wanting to, you know, have a little bit of fun with the names. There was even a summer camp variation where we called the dining room a mess hall, right? You know, it was just a way to pass the time. And so, but my mother so fondly likes to call me a Hellcat every once in a while. And so that's, you know, kind of a quiet space. It's a functional dormer that's up there, right? To be able to add a good look to the garage. So we figured, you know, we really want, you know, a way to be able to kind of have a little reading nook back there is actually what it's going to be. So that was a little bit of a joke that ended up staying on the plans, just as a, you know, an endearing way to personalize it, I'll call it.
Okay, Chairman, and actually, I do have, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's easier, the plans for 848 Pace. So bear with me here. And it's a very, should be able to see that. And it was one where we had the discussion again with the developer on this, and this is a very traditional model that this developer has used in a couple of other subdivisions.
So if I may, so my preference is to see that this is broken up a little bit more than the front elevation being all in one thing, where this has the shakes or the siding in corners of it, and then you have lap going across it, where it's broken up and it's not the same elevation over and over again.
That shake. on
Exactly,
that
just on
prominent
that
wall.
one face, right, exactly. That's my opinion, I could tell you that.
Right.
Sure, absolutely. And of course, you know, I hear you with it. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this plan too, the stone, it looks really nice on the bottom. I wish you could see it in real life. I mean, you know, with the plantings, and we're going to have the same style of the plantings. And so really, I think that the landscaping, and I should have thought to kind of maybe draw up a little visual. I guess all I did was order siding samples and didn't draw up a landscape plan or anything. But I wish that I could show you, because the landscaping that we plan to put into the front, the shrubs and all along the front, we really even designed the walkway, you know, to the front door to make sure that we would have the perfect amount of room for, you know, shrubs and things like that. So it will look broken up, you know, in I guess reality is what I'll call it. It'll look, you know, of course, more shingle than the 848 Payson house, but you won't be able to see masonry, you know, just like you can't really see it on 848 Payson until you're kind of looking up close. And they have a nice and big front yard. So really, I don't know about going onto private property to see it up close.
Right. No, we actually can't consider landscaping, you know, as part of our review, because landscaping can always change. So we really need to kind of look at the house as you know, with the building materials below. So, but you think, I mean, you've heard some comments, you know, that we have. Actually, why don't we do this before we kind of, you know, go to discuss any more? Are there any public comments to see if there's any other shared opinions?
Sure.
If
And while
if there's anyone in addition that would like to speak in regards to this agenda item, if you can just show your hand, should be located in the center part of the Zoom screen window.
And I will take this point to reiterate, all 5 of the subdivision trustees and the neighbors on both sides and across the street are all, completely agreed with the plan, actually got a number of compliments on it when they reviewed our plans. And so there were no concerns there, even specifically when the lack of masonry was brought up. And I mean, to be fair, they'll be the ones who are seeing it the most outside of us. And so I think that their commentary should be considered here as well.
All right, Chairman, I see none.
Okay. Well, I definitely see the passion that you have, for the style, the design, everything like that. But,
Thank you.
we do have a couple of commission members that do have some concerns about, that front center, section. Is there anything that you think could be added or something to kind of like, if you look at the very top, it is the gable, or maybe not using the right term, is broken up, compared to the first and second floor. Is there anything else that could be done that would be above the landscape that might help break that center mass of siding, up?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And as a little bit of context, I think I spent about 4 hours kind of going back and forth with an online type of design thing, looking at different places to put these different types of siding to kind of find what really looked the best, looked the most balanced, right? We don't want anything to really be an eyesore. But I had looked at putting maybe some trim board, kind of like what you see at the top there. We can call it a gable, yes. So kind of at that gable to form that triangle in the center. We had experimented with putting maybe some trim board on or something in the middle. It looked kind of out of place. And I mean, even if, yes, this is a little different, again, I mean, the people who will be seeing it the most don't have any concerns with it. And the colors, the colors are very aesthetically pleasing, right? It's a nice, darker gray that has, kind of a nice look to it, a lighter gray too. And so they're not boring by any means, but they'll not really stick out too much either. And this really is a popular type of siding. And the great part is that it's been around for a really long time. So it's not something where in 30 years, somebody will say,
No,
oh
I
gosh,
understand.
what?
Let me just ask, some of the members too, just kind of their thoughts. I'm not an architect, but if they extended that porch, in front of it,
Yeah, anything to add depth is usually pretty good. It looks like it might be set back a little bit.
No, I think one of the struggles I have, and I recognize I'm probably the least. It's not my role.
right,
It's a guideline. But not a requirement.
right.
And I respect the design aesthetic opinion, but I tend to lean towards, if it's not violating the principle that the neighbors don't have a concern on it, if it's structurally sound, not an eyesore, which it isn't, and the owner and neighbors are okay with it, whether it's something we would choose for ourselves, doesn't impact me as much, I guess.
Right.
But again, that's my view of it on the council. So
It's a very good point, though.
that's
I
kind of
get,
how I think about it. Like I actually like diversity in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think it looks good. From an architectural point of view, I understand it may need to be chopped up, but the neighbors don't care and the owner's happy. Personally, I'm fine with it. Different place of coming from it.
no, Brian, it's a good comment. So, any other thoughts?
What do you think, Carol?
Well, the more I look at, when I first looked at it, I think I would agree with you, but the more I look at it, the more comfortable I am with the design. And I'm not sure that the petitioner is wrong in thinking that if she like anchored the house with some masonry across the bottom, if it would just get hidden with plantings and grass and so on, you wouldn't really see it. Well, it might make some sense on the graphic that we're looking at, we're not seeing it actually on the site with plantings around. And I think that does make a difference.
I definitely agree with the masonry part of it, that I don't think that that's really what's driving this. I think for me at least, it's definitely that it's just one wall of that solid patterns facing that wall, more than the material that's used, that it's just one flat on the first elevation, on the front elevation of it. That would be mine, is just to break that thing up, and it doesn't have to be even, it could be a different kind of siding, different kind of material, different, stucco, ethos, whatever it is, but something to break it up. That's my opinion. And Carlos, I'm not even sure, if we're guiding the right way, if we can do that. Are we allowed to, as the commission, to require to change that elevation?
Well, yeah, it may not be approved.
Yeah, it could be deferred or denied in this case.
Or we can deny it
but you-
based off our. Because it's not violating the code, it's not violating a
Correct.
principle.
Mhm.
It's an opinion. And I guess I agree. That's the question I have is, is that even within our authority to?
And that is what the process of community design is. You're serving as the city's architectural review board or so, to provide your own personal opinions and then to come up to some consensus. And many communities don't go through this process for that purpose. It's not about what is, it's my role to ensure that the code items are complied with. The guidelines were put together because individuals in your positions felt that, that there was not some cohesive or standard process to provide for the review and to provide developers to know what the expectations are here. So the guidelines specifically say we would like to encourage at least 50% masonry. And when you get to that point and you have no masonry, to come in before the commission to justify why that.
Because if this had been a solid wall of brick,
Yeah.
it never would have come to us.
It-
50%.
It would still go through the review process, but I kind of concur in terms of if that wall was all brick, would we still be having this? In theory, we should still be having the same argument though.
Well, that's my point. It's
Yeah.
still been the same thing, right? It would've been
Right.
a solid
It's just a
wall.
solid wall, yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm bringing up, it's like, it got brought forward more because it's not the masonry. but now
Correct.
we're-
Well, and you have to know, because we try to work with the applicants and get a better understanding in that process, is that the requirement for the brick is on exterior materials. And in that, it tries to note that you need to differentiate some of the building planes. It urges you to use masonry because that is the material of choice for the community in there. And when you come in, that you show within your design, what did you do to accommodate for that deviation? So, and in this case, I think they've done a good job articulating, that the spaces were kind of, if you take back, if you look at this elevation, and if that shingle was brick, I honestly, I don't know if we would be having this conversation.
No.
I don't think we would.
So that articulation is there. It's just, is it really just that material? And while we want to encourage brick, like on the staff end, it's always hard because, somewhere, and it shouldn't be brick, it's masonry, we want to urge masonry, but there are some designs that you don't use masonry. And we've had several come in where they were all citing the Cape Cods, are a good example. And I think somebody's used it about 3 or 4 times and gotten approval for.
I think the concern when council wasn't the material, right? It's the continuity of the material, like the basing of it, not that it's this versus that.
I think for me, I'm used to seeing that material more as an accent piece, as opposed to a prominent feature on it. Yeah, so I think that's why it's, I see it more, so be it right or wrong. I do, it's very interesting. I agree with Carol. The more I look at it, the more I'm okay with it, and I'm not sure exactly why, but my very first inclination was, I didn't, there was,
The other, if I can just note, because it was important when these were being put together, it started, I believe, in '04 and then got readdressed in '06, and then I think we're under a 2012 version. The concern was, back in '04 was the use of vinyl siding or lap siding. And overall, here's where I would, defer to the expertise of those with more specialty trades within materials. EFIS was a concern, vinyl siding was a concern. And we've seen an evolution of materials in there. We've also seen somebody come before the commission with a brick veneer, but it looked like, there was no guidance of, well, is that masonry? It's a veneer, it's made out of
Right.
stone, but it's just a 2-inch, a piece. And we're going to start seeing more and more of these as costs change and materials change, durability of materials change. So the question that the guy, going back to the guidelines, it was, are these quality materials? And are they being used in a way to articulate that elevation in addition to those planes?
Material quality change, to your point.
Right.
Something now could be a 40, 50-year material that looks quality in the past, vinyl wasn't.
Correct.
Mr.
Nothing
Chairman,
isn't bad.
go ahead, Carol.
so, I mean, to me, the elevation looks like that centerpiece looks like it is broken up. It's got 4 windows.
Mhm.
There's a line by the roof line going across.
Mhm.
So it's not a continuous blank surface. So I guess the question that I would ask is if they were to consider modifying that and a row of masonry across the bottom isn't going to add very much.
Right.
What else might they do there to break that up? Is there something that we could suggest that would be, is there a detail or something that they could add to it that would you all might be more comfortable with, that we might suggest?
I first I refer to Daniel for sure for this, but I kind of like what Rob said, that we're used to seeing this kind of material as an accent piece. Well, this could be the main material, but I don't think there's an accent piece going along, whichever way it goes. And I think that's maybe part of what I'm having a tough time with. And I thought you expressed that, and that broke it up on the house that we saw before, was that it was an accent piece above it, but
Right.
even if that was the main area and you had an accent piece, that would break it up. And I think that may be what we're looking for, or what I'm looking for, I guess,
Right.
or the commission is.
Well, if I may, what if the top on the gable end were a different color?
Right, or something, right, it could be even a different color, a different pattern, something to,
Yeah.
but I'm one person, so, the
Right.
commission,
Right.
So you think something in the peak of the roof of the gable there?
A different shade?
Like
is that
a
what you-
different, like a low window even, or a design of some sort?
I'm gonna throw something out that could be just a really small thing, just, you, Elizabeth, you can say if you like it or not, okay? But if you just added some flower pot holders, below those second-story windows, in the center.
Yeah, so first, I appreciate very much, the efforts in, how getting a little bit creative with us, right? I know that, to some of you, you may not have really seen something exactly like this before. Flower pot holders is actually something that I looked into. Sometimes there are safety issues with them. We had actually considered them on the second floor, but sometimes, unfortunately, as anything really happens outside, sometimes, materials degrade a little bit over a period of years. And right, remember, we plan to be here for a very long time. And so my preference would be to not have something that could potentially fall from the second floor. But, that said, there were a number of ways that we experimented with this. We tried pulling the porch across, we tried putting that trim board on, and nothing really seemed to actually add to the design that much. I mean, there are definitely houses. The only one that I can think of happens to be one that's actually in Kirkwood. But there are a number of houses that are being built actually entirely with this shingle design. And it really does look good. It doesn't look like an eyesore at all. Just because it's a little bit different or new doesn't necessarily make it the wrong decision. However, that said, if we had actually, the intention had been to use a little bit less of that. I think it's called maybe the clapboard siding, kind of the long, plain, straight siding. So we had tried to use a little bit less of that on the front of the house. And adding in a third material is something that we had considered too. Can I emphasize how many months we have spent planning this out and trying out different things? And adding a third material to it, siding, a variety of designs, it really ended up getting more into that sort of eyesore spectrum. It really looked a little bit out of place and a little forced. However, of course, please, if you have other ideas, I would love to hear them. And Jody, I'm sorry, I know that you've had your hand raised for a while.
I was just thinking, what if we saw it in color instead of black and white? Sometimes that makes a difference of how it looks when you actually see a picture with, colorized versus just black and white. At least that's what I'm saying, is black and white on my screen.
If you'd like, I'd be happy to hold up the siding samples that I have with the exact colors, even if the lighter gray is not the exact material, right? It's the same shingle look. The colors are the same. Would that help?
And I know, I think we need to see the whole, just a picture of the whole thing of how it's going to look finished. If that makes sense.
It does. We had tried to stay away from, doing something like a color rendering since we had the siding materials, and it takes so much extra time. And, thinking about the winter when we'll be breaking ground on this sort of schedule, potential foundation issues, depending on when we're, trying to get that done really in the middle of winter. We were hoping to be able to see an approval tonight. And that would take significant time to put together because we don't have it right now. But it is the two grays, and if I can hold them up again, if that would be helpful, of course, I'm happy to do that for the commission.
Would that be helpful for anybody?
Sure. So here's the, again, a little bit darker gray, and the colors appear a little bit different because of the lighting, but here is the lighter gray. Again, this is the same shingle design. It won't actually be like that, but this way you can at least see the colors together. These were the siding samples that we were able to order.
So which color is going to be used? The darker or the lighter?
So both of the colors will be used, but the bottom one here, this darker gray, is actually the color that would be on the shingle. It's really not that dark when you look at it. It's just my lighting makes things look a little bit darker. It really is a very pleasant gray color that we've actually seen on a lot of houses in Olivet. I just can't remember the addresses right now off the top of my head, but we've done a lot of driving around.
So what about the light color, the lighter color one? Where's
Yeah, the light color would be on the clapboard type of siding, the kind of long horizontal.
Okay.
Put the shingles down. It's hard to hear you.
Yes,
Oh, sorry.
no worries, no worries.
I'll put that one down for now and just leave this one up for you all. Again, this appears darker here with the lighting than it would actually outside. It really is a very pleasant, it's not really too dark at all.
All right. Well, I think we kind of are at, we've talked this out. I think let's hear a motion and let's bring it to a vote. We did ask for
did.
that
Okay, we did.
and there were none, but Carlos, are there any more hands raised by any chance?
Sure, if there's anybody that would like to speak in regards to this agenda item, if you could show, raise a hand.
Can we put that as a motion and as the motion that she shows us the color renderings of just that front of it? Or we have to approve the whole thing
I
right
think
now?
we're gonna have to prove the whole
Okay.
thing. Yeah,
I'll make a motion.
go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 9721 Hastings Drive as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 21st, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Lewis and seconded by Ms. Wagner. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
No.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
No.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Rich,
No,
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
and Chairman Jorgel.
Yes.
And the motion fails to pass. It was at three yeas,
3 to
noes.
3.
3 to 3.
Yes.
All right.
So I have to ask, and again, please, I'm not a builder, I'm not an architect, I'm just trying to build the house that my family and I'll live in. So I mean, is there any way that we could have had more conversation tonight about it? Anything else that we could have talked through before just declining it like this now? I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to ask that.
No,
I'm
you're fine.
curious.
You're definitely fine for asking that, that. I think we try to come up with some ideas, to make some of the other commission members, feel better, about it. But and I think too, we didn't know how the votes were going to turn out, but there were a lot of, people that were okay with the design. So I think if we did see a color rendering of it, that would have been more helpful, and that might have made some of the commission members, feel better with it. And maybe even,
Pictures of existing, maybe pictures of existing houses that have that same kind of look to it would be a great thing to bring, I would say.
yeah. And if you tried some of those ideas that we were just talking about, and that you said you kind of, drew them on, or, you kind of, did some renderings yourself, and like you said, if they didn't look, right, you could bring those, because sometimes that does help clarify, what everybody's thoughts on it.
I see. Well, I appreciate your insight, and I'm so sorry. I wish that we could have had this discussion before the vote was passed. I mean, are we able to continue to talk about this and see? I mean,
Carlos,
And what I would suggest is the commission has its next scheduled meeting on November 4th. And if there are any revisions that can be provided, by probably Monday, the November 1st, we can coordinate to bring this back to the commission. The commission can take a vote to reconsider the motion in there, and then have a discussion on that. So I think it's similar to a deferral, and gives you a week's time to kind of talk with your designers and try to put something together, or provide that additional information on those addresses.
So if, for example, I completely, understand the schedule of the meetings is, if we can get something together sooner to kind of show everything that we've tried, the trim board, the porches, all the things, again, from this like 6-inch binder thick that we've been considering, and color renderings take a really long time to put together. The estimates, because we had gathered estimates for those just in case, but since it wasn't required, we wanted to be able to move forward a little bit sooner and get thoughts. And so, even if we aren't able to get those together because they take a while, are we able to kind of have more of a discussion about this, maybe even before the next meeting? Is something like that possible? Again, of course, we just want to make sure that we can have a conversation, make sure that, we can present everything to you all, be able to show things even in person if that's helpful, to be able to, get this approved. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, all the people who are going to be seeing this house, none of them had an issue with it. And we actually got compliments on the design.
I understand exactly your frustration and, concerns, but we meet, we're all volunteers. We have to meet at scheduled times, that we have to post agenda items. We can't set up a private meeting, with that. You could have discussions with Carlos,
Okay.
about that, but no, I'm sorry. I wish there was something more that you had here, already that we could, look at or discuss. But, I think, we do have some, some concerns, with that. So,
Yeah, of course. And please, my apologies if I, was inconveniencing anybody with that suggestion. Of course, I don't want to do that. And Carlos, absolutely, I will be in touch with you and we can go further there. So thank you to everybody for your time. We'll, go back, see what we can put together. And, if there are any other specific considerations that you'd like to share during this time, of course, I'm all ears, would love to be able to hear them.
thank you, Elizabeth. We do
Thank you
really,
very much. We'll get it done.
yeah, we
Thank you.
appreciate you being here and, we look forward to seeing what, at the next meeting.
Thank you.
No, that was a tough one. So, all right, let's, we'll give Carlos a little bit of time and then we'll move on to item E, which is our last petition for today. 23 St. Alfred Road. Petition type is a site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home. The petitioner is Kamara Vadivalu. I apologize for mispronouncing that. And the property owner is Anand Kasanavan. And this one's gonna be a little tougher. And Kumarasamy Sukumari.
Okay.
So apologize for mispronouncing any names. So thank you, Carlos.
All right, Chairman. We have a petition for the construction of a new single-family home at 23 St. Alfred Road. This is at the terminus, the far southern terminus of St. Alfred Road. There's no cul-de-sac or turnaround that's on there. The street just kind of ends. And there it's on the west side of the roadway. There's quite a bit of topography change and grading in there, as you'll see in the proposed site plan. They submitted plans to demolition the existing home and build a new single-family home on there. And the primary items that staff is bringing to the commission based on the report and the review, you have the full sets of plans and the site improvements is, again, the elevation finish, the masonry guideline, the exterior finish primarily consists of only EIFS. There are two twin garages that project out more than the 15 foot that's identified in the guidelines. In this case, the projection here is 26 feet. The current driveway slopes are in excess of 9.3%. Again, we're trying to get those to about 8% where the opportunity exists. And then staff would like to get some defined, ensure that the swells that are identified in the site plan are further defined, or to utilize some type of frame string system to bring that stormwater from the disrupted soils because of the new footprint from the rear towards the street and away from the adjacent neighbors. This is the design. And again, the guidelines provide specific aspects of the use of masonry or the projection of the garage. And in doing so, they also provide other means, that if you're doing so, to be able to articulate or note what those changes are caused. And you can see in terms of the elevation finish, it's a specific design that the petitioners kind of identified. It's a style that they're trying to integrate in here, and it's an all EFS use. The twin garages and their projections is because the property is only 83 feet in width. So it is a little bit more compact in there, but it also assists in breaking the elevation planes. They have a further setback, so it's not like the garages are, it's a house connected. It's not a house connected to a garage. There are garages that are used to accentuate and break up the mass of the primary house plane in there. There's quite a bit of slope on this property, but that being said, you can see in this elevation specifically that there is quite a bit of exposure of foundation area. And I don't want to say that the property is being mounded, because I don't believe it is. It's only about a foot to a foot and a half higher than the existing elevation, but it's a wider house. It's a bigger house. Therefore, you see some of that grade deviation along the sides because the pad's wider. But that also causes some of the garage, the driveway issues in there. Overall, again, as you look at the roof, the massing, the roof, the elevation articulation, it's a very nice design, and they carry it throughout the sides and the rear. Be glad to answer any specific questions, and we do have the petitioner representatives here.
Carlos, what is going to be the material below grade?
It's required that they extend that material down
To
on
the
the fronts
ground.
and the sides, yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Carlos at this time? Carlos, I think we could bring on the,
Okay.
oh, did they get approval from the neighborhood?
It's my understanding, and this is the second one that we've had within the past 2 months, that there's not a architectural review component in the Heather Hill. I believe this is Plat 3. It's
Heather
either
Hill
Plat 2 or Plat-
Edition, or-
Correct.
Yeah,
There is an association for the maintenance of the street, but that they don't provide or serve as a review board.
okay.
So now we did send out notifications, of course.
And
Yeah.
no,
Adjacent property
no
owner.
comments back from anyone?
No.
I'm kind of curious, it does seem unique, but maybe it's in line with what the neighborhood is. So I'm kind of curious if we have other examples.
It's a mix.
Is it,
Yeah. Yeah, there's,
what is the style called? Or it's,
this style?
yeah.
What is this style called? I don't know what we would call this style. Well, that's the. Do you guys know the style of? Carlos, are you bringing on? the
Yes, you
petition?
said, okay.
Oh, is he on?
Yes.
Okay, I
No,
couldn't
no,
tell.
he's not on yet. I'm sorry, I'm bringing both. Mr. Vadivilu, I'm going to bring you on. He goes by Kumar. He will be on, and if you can just state your full name and address, and then I have your video available, that'd be great. And then I also have Mr. Kasevavan on here. He's the property owner. I'm going to bring him in also.
Question.
Mr. Casavan, again, if you can state your name and address and
Carlos, well, yeah, Carol has a quick question for you.
okay, 1 second.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello,
Okay,
yes,
hold
we
on
can
1
hear you.
second before. Yes, ma'am.
So Carlos, as I look at this, so there are two separate garages protruding from the front of the house, is that?
Correct. Mhm.
Yes.
With the entrances in the middle.
Okay, so you have to you have to put, the entrances are, okay. So when the front facing, even though the garages are front, they're side entry garages. They're just in the front of the house.
Yeah, and they face the interior of the property.
Okay, so then the front entry, okay. Interesting, okay, I understand.
Okay, thank you, sir, for being on. We appreciate it.
Sure.
It is a unique house, and I don't believe we've seen a house like this. What style is it? Just so, because I'm not an architect, so I don't know.
Well, you see this more in southern part of the United States. More in the Texas areas, you see this more prevalent.
Yeah, I'd like to express a few things over here. Like our engineer Kumar said, it's called the Southern style. As a matter of fact, I want to be very honest with this group here. We were planning to relocate, moving with my two daughters to Texas, but somehow we are so grounded with this area, meaning with the Olivet and the people in the neighborhood. So our thought was to like get that style of like Southern style into the Olivet too. So that's where we landed up here. So
Okay,
yes, my
good.
girls were all raised up in the same school over here. We all like the community, people, and the city, and the encouragement, the support you guys give it. So we changed our mind, instead of moving out. We like to bring the whole thing inside the same neighborhood here.
Does anybody on the commission? Thank you, sir. Does anybody on the commission have any specific questions or comments? The only thing I got a question on is the ability to turn in and out of that driveway, or the garages, I should say. I assume that's, Carlos, that's not an issue, with turn radiuses or, things like that.
Yeah, the code does have a section regarding the distance between doors, that you should have a minimum of 25 feet between those, and they do show that based on that distance between the two in that elevation. Let me go back to the building plan and the footprint.
And I was curious kind of what the doors were going to look like, just because when you see it at a little bit of an angle, you might see those doors. So I was curious of how that was going to look.
And that I do not have a,
We don't have the color schemes all worked out yet.
Okay. Are you planning on just putting a traditional garage door? Or is there going to be any details on that?
It's a traditional garage door right now.
And what color is the ethos going to be, or the stucco?
We are looking at like the light gray or beige, the light beige. All the columns and everything will be all white. And the balconies are going to be black, wrought iron black.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Let's see, none. Carlos, do we have any public comments?
if there's anybody that would like to speak in regards to this petition, if you can show your hand, it's located on the lower part of your Zoom screen. Just give a second real quick.
No
Again, if anybody would like to speak in regards to this petition. I'm not showing none.
Carlos, have you discussed the issues with the kind of the slopes and everything with the petitioner?
Yeah, it's a tough site. If you look at the grading in there and you look at the existing house, so there was an opportunity to, the top of foundation is not out of character with what is that. I think they're looking at a 648. And you can see some of the high elevations is about 647. They're still going to be lower than the adjacent neighbor that has a top of foundation of 653. And they have a pretty sizable setback. And if you look at the old house that was in there, you know, the configuration of that driveway is not, bear with me here as I go in. It's not as different. Their top of foundation was about a foot lower, but they have the same existing kind of condition of that slope. And it's just that those grades, as you go south on St. Alfred, rise so quickly.
Right.
Now, you could say, well, it's based on the footprint and design, but I think you would still have, even if it was a traditional home, that setback right along here, it was still going to be steep.
Right. Right.
The other aspects is, you know, again, the horseshoe. I don't know if it helps, but even if you didn't do the horseshoe, you're still going to have to kind of curve around to get straight up on top.
Right.
You can't just do a perpendicular driveway to the street curb.
I think the horseshoe does help, you know, make it a little bit longer or a little bit less of a slope to it. Okay, any other questions or comments? Any other issues that we need to address? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
a motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 23 St. Alfred Road, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 21, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Mr. Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Jurgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, sirs. Appreciate it for being on.
Ne- Thank you very much for the council.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, other business. I'll give you time, Carlos, don't worry.
Depending on how long it takes me to take a 2-minute stretch. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how long the section will be. but
It might be a little bit long, but yeah, it'll be fine.
While Carlos gets ready.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I noticed that, fencing is here, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting design.
Yeah, it was very different, very interesting.
Boo Fest. Halloween. Didn't you go to Stacy Park tonight? For the,
Oh, yeah, I did. The kids were there. I had to book, they were getting the movie screen blown up. Kids were there, passed out, some candy. Sydney, the mayor, showed up and, the judging contest kind of got too close to this meeting. So Sydney ended up being the only judge for the costume contest. I'm like, I gotta go home.
You can be the declaration.
Yeah, yeah, I had to go home and change him,
Yeah.
I originally had a different costume for last week, but it included makeup, and I'm like, no. I can't wash my makeup off and get in here. I just put some pajamas on and a robe and,
What was your costume with makeup?
Originally there was going to be a characterization of two different faces.
Oh,
Yeah. Tammy kind of made me say, she said, do you really want to do that with a bunch of kids? And I'm like, well, why the hell, thank God the thing ain't that. I wouldn't put up a different thing, but it's all good.
Yeah, I was bummed. The weather turned last Friday, so we were gonna head over there.
Yeah.
Do without outdoor things. in
Yeah,
St. Louis.
Yeah, the weather, you never know. Dang different. I mean, there's times we've had beautiful weather, there's times it's been cold.
Yeah, Halloween's the same. I remember years 70 and years at 25.
There's just a lot of us.
I know, I was like, God, can I not?
I kind of like these little breaks. in the middle. That's, breaks up the monotony, right? Or breaks up the,
Appreciate it.
no problem. I was just saying, I kind of like some of these breaks in the middle.
It kind of resets your brain.
It does. Okay, Carlos, I guess we're ready to start talking about discussion items. But
We do all of that?
Because we made it kind of like they throw a coverage requirement that covers.
not just accessory structures, but everything. Right.
Carlos, I'm having a hard time hearing you now. You were fine
There you
before.
go. Sorry about that. Is that
Thank
better,
you.
Jody?
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, I'm just gonna go a quick overview in terms of the staff memo dated October 21st on the site coverage. Just noting that I got information on Clayton and University City. So we have about 5 communities to look at. Of those, Frontenac was the most stringent, then followed by us, all of that. And some of it is because we broke our coverage requirements into components. And this was done back in 2002 as a means to control the building footprint as opposed to controlling site coverage. There was concerns that houses were getting too big. So we adopted a site coverage requirement and a FAR for single family homes that we didn't have it in place. Then over time, when we started dealing with accessory structures, we created a cap for that total number. So that was another one that was added. And then we've talked since I've been here about someday adding driveways to the process and other flat work. But that's always been a concern, and we've never got to that point in there. So anyway, long story short, you have those to kind of look at the different numbers. We can put a better table together to show comparisons for you at our next meeting. I still think that that ours are pretty stringent. I'd like to increase the coverage standards for accessory structures, not do a major overhaul, just kind of address the issue that's before us right now, and look at the numbers that are set just for those accessory structures, and look at opportunities to increase that percentage based on the lot size. Also have the discussion of whether that pool footprint should count or not. Again, in Clayton, it's 50% of the pool, I think is how it was set. In other communities, the whole pool is exempt. To others, it's coverage. It doesn't matter, whether it's water or so. And that's another thing that we should look into. I'm not comfortable with the driveways, and the reason I'm not comfortable with that is what we see in the permitting process a lot is, we'll have somebody come in and they'll have a driveway and identify that the cost for the driveway, now of course all this may have changed in the past couple of months, would be $2,000 to $8,000. It's a pretty good spectrum, but a survey to make that assessment, if it's an existing property and if they don't have a survey ready to get all those coverages put in place, is going to cost them about $800. And I don't think that there's a nexus between that value and some of that cost. Now, the cost for a driveway has probably gone up significantly in there, but in order for me to do a full coverage requirement, they're going to have a property boundary survey that shows the driveway, the sidewalks, the house, that they have all existing accessory structures in there. There are a lot of things that we can do within my staff to assist them in the process, because county has some pretty good numbers in there. We could look at Google Earth and we can do some measurements, but we're taking guesses. As we start getting a more comprehensive survey, there's some cost into that. And I think, again, it depends what the end goal is. The other thing is, I think there's other ways to control a driveway, and some of these communities had those in there. But that's a whole different discussion, because now we're broadening what we're originally trying to tackle, which is good too. I think in the long range, we may want to look at this more comprehensively. But the issue right now is whether one is smaller lots should be provided an opportunity for more coverage for accessory structures. Two, whether the pool should count or not count, or portion should or shouldn't count. And then finally, I do believe, I don't mind the coverage increases if the property owner is going to hold more of that stormwater on their property. Meaning, again, that it can't be directed to a swell or a rain garden or so, but to actually have something that's designed to detain water as opposed to just filter the water as it moves through. Now, you can do a rain garden and you can do a bio basin that detains too. I'm not saying this, but they would have to provide the specifics and engineering for that. So anyway, we'll have further discussion. And again, I think it would probably be good to kind of put these in a table so you can see the comparisons in between. And again, if there's comments that we want to continue to look at the driveway standards, I'm open to that. I just have a little concern about the cost.
Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the pool question, and I sent you an email, which I didn't bring a copy
It
of.
was very good. And Carlos, do you have that?
Yeah, regarding the swimming pool
Right, just some things for us to
To
think
think
about.
about. I think it was very
Share
good.
with the group.
I can read it out loud if you don't have it.
No,
have
I
it.
can get access to it real quickly. Just bear with me 1 second. One of these computers is really slow, so.
One of the points that I was thinking about was when we're talking about an in-ground pool, are we talking about just the water surface area? Or are we talking about the whole pool area that includes the concrete patio that you walk around to get to the pool, because that's, to me, that's very impervious.
Yes.
It
It depends on how it's sloped, I think.
Depends on partly how it's sloped. And then we also have to think about, well, what if we just have, like, when I was little, we had a portable pool that my parents put in for us. It was above ground, you know, big size, it was round. But, you know, it stayed there for several years till we totally butchered it. You know, it had too many holes, had too much tape on it. But for the time that it was there, it was a impervious surface.
Right.
You know, and it was there for, I don't know how long we
But
had
it
that.
collected the water too.
It collected some water too. Then we splashed a lot out. You know, I guess, and then, you know, then you've got things like fish ponds. You know, people have fish ponds in the yards. You know, those hold water too? So how do we count that? If we're talking about, yeah, it just kind of,
It's interesting.
the list kind of keeps growing, and we have to kind of, if we're gonna start parsing it, we need to kind of think all that through, I think. I guess
Most-
the other question that in my mind, I can't really answer, but I guess how big of a deal is it to count or not count the surface area of the water? How much does it really add to the impervious surface of a lot that we're talking about? Is it? Because, you know, pools, the surface area of the water is only a portion of the whole thing that we call a pool. So how much of that is water and how much of that is the concrete walk around, which can change depending on all kinds of things.
When you look at the definition, because there is a pool deck, and that is the surface area surrounding the pool. The pool is usually some type of you know, it's like a tub, like the interior portion of a tub. And then you can have whatever you want around it. When we look at it, we're looking at just that component that holds water. That's what's
Right.
defined as a swimming pool. Then you have a pool deck. Some communities have exempted the first 4 feet from the perimeter of the pool footprint in there. And there's, I think that example was in the one that's in here. Others haven't.
Most of the time, the pool decks slope away from the pool. Okay, because you don't want debris that's on the pool deck to go into the pool. One other challenging issue with pools is you have different types of covers. Some of the covers are impervious, you know, they're vinyl, and you have to put it like a sump pump, you know, on top of the pool. Now, it does collect water, you know, and contain it, and the whole pool kind of, the cover sinks down. But most of them have like a sump pump on there that is in kind of right away pumping that water off.
Is that though, I'm thinking about, you brought this,
Mhm.
to me, you're covering the winter.
Right.
And I'm curious from the amount of rain expectation. Is it summer and spring more than winter? Is that a fair statement? Because I'm
Yeah.
wondering if it's not as.
No,
you're
it's
absolutely right,
fair.
but it may not be as big a factor because it's winter, it doesn't rain as much. I could be wrong.
Right.
But it's spring and summer.
But a lot of times people don't open their pools until May, and
Mhm.
some people close their
April, then you're
pools
right,
in
yeah.
September,
Yeah,
you know.
fair.
Some people keep it open longer, you know, but it does kind of vary. But it, you know, there are those impervious covers, they're expensive. So most people go with more of like a mesh type, which allows the water to go in. It just does allow dirt and debris to also go in. So opening up a pool is a lot harder that way. But in talking about kind of impervious and pervious, you know, materials and areas, what about decks? Decks also, you know, I mean, they allow water to, you know, you're not stopping the flow of water into the ground below it. So, you know, if we're gonna start exempting things, you know, that one from a runoff standpoint could be, you know, could considered as well.
At the same time, it depends on the material used
Yes.
more than anything, because some are impervious or some.
Or the
some-
boards are placed so tight.
in
that
the-
it's-
I have a small, a small deck, and it's purposely designed so that there are repulls, so it doesn't collect water on the top and it sinks through.
Yeah.
So
But it also matter what below the deck and what's capturing that water. If it's just
Right.
dirt like most things are, then it's just gonna do, you know, it's just gonna run off.
Right.
And you're not actually in getting that water in the ground. It's, the pool is the other thing I wanted to bring up is that area of the pool, you're missing the runoff from it. There
That's
is a
true.
negative effect that you're
Exactly.
sitting there, that the rain up here is not getting captured as it's going through that pool
That's
Exactly.
of
true.
that area. So there's definitely, there is a negative impact for having that pool, even though it's catching that water right there during
Right.
those months, but every other time, it's actually a negative impact on it.
Exactly.
I
That's
would
right.
think, yeah, I'm
And
not sure.
That's
I'm
why
thinking about it right, but that's what I would kind of think.
I don't disagree. That's why I think you have to, you know, you know, it needs to account for something, you know.
So when people grade and they not pool, they grade pool.
Most of the time, the pool deck slopes away. Now, it may not always be the case.
So that's standard generally. So you're not-
At least I think so, because I've
Otherwise,
always,
you're overfilling the pool every time, and that's an issue.
or, you know, you have debris that kind of accumulates
Yeah,
on
you
the,
don't-
you
you
don't want
that
it
leaves on the
washed
dirt
in.
while going in, so that
Right.
makes sense.
Makes sense, I'm
So
not,
to your
I'm not
point,
sure.
exactly, it makes it worse in that regard. Then it's huge hole in the ground that it can't absorb any of it because it's all gonna.
Right,
Right, it's even going in the opposite direction that way.
right.
So it could be capturing some, but it's not helping the runoff.
Right, it's not
Right.
soaking that in as it's trying to get off your property or stay on your property. It's less of a chance that that water is gonna get to somebody else's property or downstream is
Right,
what I would look at it like.
right.
I think that's a good point.
So you did say that there were some communities were discounting the area of the pool.
Yes,
What percentages, just out of curiosity, I think you said Clayton was 50%?
the Clayton had a 45% cap.
Forty-five.
Excuse me, 55. It's a 55% cap. In there.
So
Now,
if you had 1,000 square foot pool, how much would it?
you're talking, I thought you talked in terms of the coverage requirement. Hold on 1 second here, because I did highlight some of those. If you look at page 3 of 8 in Creve Core, on the top towards the definitions sections, and I highlighted it in yellow. That's one that discounts the first 4 feet around the perimeter.
But not the pool itself.
But not including the swimming pools, sidewalks, or pool decks of 4 feet or less.
So they don't count the pools,
That's correct.
and they also don't count
Count the
4
first 4
feet
feet.
around.
Another one that did that was, or had something on page 5 of 8 for Frontenac. You'll see under right, the middle section, it should be highlighted in yellow. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not the one I was looking for. Yeah, and it was page 8 of 8 on Clayton, up at the top under those definitions. The third definition, the second definition, the impervious material. This is the last sentence, for the purposes of calculating impervious coverage, pools and other water features shall only count at 50% of the actual water area. And I'll get that highlighted in the next go around so it's visible.
Where is that? I'm sorry.
Page 8 of 8
Yeah.
for Clayton, the second definition, impervious material, the last sentence.
I would think that that is more in line with what we're talking about now, that we're saying that it's not, you can't give a discount of 100%, but
Right.
there's some of it in there, whether it's 50%, 25 or 75%, but I think that's more what everybody's saying here is, you know, you don't get all the credit, but you get some of the credit.
Well, and I guess part of what's confusing to me is that if we give, say, partial credit for the pool, because there's still, I think you're right, there's still runoff issues that the pool does create.
Mhm.
So how much? I mean,
Absorption.
if you say, okay, you get maybe 40%. It's plain around. And you add that to your impervious surface. I mean, how much, when you talk about controlling for stormwater, how much of a real difference does that make?
Remember the presentation, Carlos, that you
I mean,
had?
to me, it
Yeah.
seems sort of like
Yeah, oh, yeah.
it's a non-event. Yeah, yeah, I mean, why do we should, if it's not gonna really be a meaningful change, we're just splitting hairs here.
And if it's only, we know that it's only getting worse, and Jonathan, it's getting worse, and so I guess my thought is, why would we give more relief when in fact we're gonna need
More control.
more control?
Well,
The difference is one little, I forget what you call it, the one system, bigger thing versus 10, that's one thing, but if it's one, but the size.
Right.
Remember that presentation that you had where there was a guy, it was, where they had different materials and they would show you how
Mhm.
much of,
Yeah,
you know,
I
water
think we
was
have it
absorbed.
online.
And I wonder if we should review that too, to just, I mean, I think you're saying don't discount the pools. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
Because they're not really retaining much water.
they maybe retain a little bit, but they're also negatively impacting runoff.
The net
Right.
effect is a
And-
wash.
And it seems to me that at best, the net effect is a wash and we're splitting hairs here. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that if we were to come up with a number, okay, that it's gonna make a significant difference in how much stormwater runoff and how well it's controlled. And that to me, that's the difference. That makes a difference in how I approach my thinking about it. If we can really influence stormwater runoff, then yeah, but if it's not gonna make that much of a difference.
Compared to the rest of the.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
I mean, what's the point? I mean, there may be a house or two that really may make a difference, but citywide, if it doesn't, we're just wasting time.
But they could also, if it did make a difference on, you know, one or two houses where they couldn't get the pool or couldn't get an accessory structure, they could come to us for approval anyway.
That's right.
You'd almost rather leave it as a assumption is don't count it, but if they need an exception, that's what we.
Then they step in and say, hey, there's a hardship, I
This is why.
want, you know, I don't know what people put in their
Or the
yard.
way
So I
it's
don't put
located,
anything in my
it's
yard.
okay, or
Yeah, exactly. I
it's
mean,
going to runoff anyway, or
I'm not sure if what you said wasn't right when you said, you know, we're trying to control it. We should do the best job and set the bar way up and then kind of bring it down a little bit as opposed to setting it down here and then seeing what happens.
Mhm.
I'm
It's
not
gonna
sure
be
if that
tough to
was,
undo that later.
right,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure if what you said wasn't the correct thing.
I mean, again, we talked about stormwater management quite a bit,
Yeah.
and
no,
it's not getting better. I'd rather have people assume that they need to do the best and then ask for exceptions.
But it does restrict what people can do.
I think that's
you know,
okay.
With their yards. And, you know, and as we start, you know, I mean, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, you know. In the commercial spaces, we're not, you know, trying to push for more grassy areas. We seem to be pushing more for as much development, you know, as we can, so it creates a more higher density.
Is that though, and I don't disagree, because I would love grassy areas in that regard, but in the commercial, are we asking them to, what are they doing with the water? Like when we look at Oliver, look at all crossing.
They'll have more refined detention systems than a
Yeah.
single family home would. And only because they're regulated through the Metropolitan Sewer District.
So it almost takes care of itself more.
And they do like, they'll be like required to give us impervious pavers like somewhere in the parking lot if MSD would be the one that would require that.
Correct. The MSD would have those additional criteria where it gets a little bit more technical. Now, we've tried to apply some of those into the residential standards over time, but it is a little bit more of a, you know, engineering intensive assessment or evaluation. You know, and that's why we kind of leave it to MSD. They have the expertise for that. And again, those costs wouldn't be, you know, trying to apply those type of standards to a residential would make it kind of somewhat prohibited, you know, it's so leasing. And I think too, because that one of the things when I'm looking at these numbers is like, again, it goes back to what was the community's goal? Was the goal about open space and keeping green, or was their goal about stormwater? Ours is we're trying to do both, but I think more about the stormwater than we are concerned about green open space.
And I think part of the challenge is, and over time, right? Like homes are so much bigger now than they were 50. People want bigger homes. People, if they're going to move to community, they're not going to be okay with a 1,200 square foot home anymore. They were decades ago. So if we're going to account for that, then the thought is, if you're giving up the green space, you're getting rid of the trees, which trees is a separate topic. But it's, we need to account for the water.
I tend to err on the side of being more conservative on this issue.
Yeah.
Just because I think Jonathan is correct in that the amount of rain that we are getting here is increasing. And certainly the stormwater protection that I have at my house is really pretty inadequate. And we've spent thousands, you know, to try and keep the water out. And I think if we can help the community be prepared for what's coming a little bit more by being a little more conservative, I think the community is going to benefit in the long run, because it sure isn't getting better.
And Rob, to your point, you said it's hard, not hard to use, but it's going to restrict what they're doing. But
Right.
I think
And what I also think, I mean, I'm a pool owner. So, but I do kind of like outdoor space, people using the outdoors too, rather than just being in their house all the time, you know, so I do like that aspect of it. And I do think that when we were looking at the accessory structures and trying to put a cap on that, we were also like, we didn't want a bunch of sheds, three-dimensional, you know, objects, you know, cluttering up the yard, if I remember. That's what I remember. I'm sure we talked about pools also, you know, from a drainage, you know, standpoint. But I do think there's some benefits to pools.
don't disagree. I just think it's, to Carol's point, like, you know, we are on the side of, I mean, right now, if we don't change anything, we're just saying we reevaluate, you know, we're looking for exceptions, right?
But we can't give those exceptions, right, Carlos? They
Well,
have to go
under
to
the way
Board
the
of
curtain,
Appeals.
well, the way this issue came before the commission is that, and again, we just had that Villa Capri, you know, they went ahead and they hit the cap. They were in excess of the cap. And we sat down and had a discussion that, you know, that this was not a commission review thing, this was a Board of Adjustment and what the conditions of the Board of Adjustment are. We also had at the same time an applicant on Cherry Tree, and they decided to pursue it with the Board of Adjustment. And the Board of Adjustment found that, you know, that while they were sympathetic to the improvements that the property owner was making and would be able to accommodate for that excess coverage in some means, you know, for the excess stormwater that would be generated, their purview just doesn't allow them the authority to make an exemption just because. So the long story is that at least the way, you know, the numbers can stay the same, but then the commission should make a decision that, okay, but be, you know, that 10% cap, the first 10 to 15%, you have to come to the commission and prove how you're going to address the issue. And then anything over 15, you're back at the Board of Adjustment. And unless you have some unique lot condition, the board really doesn't have a justification to authorize the change. I think what the board saw was that there was a reasonable request. The gentleman was willing to provide means to address the stormwater in there, but we had a number cap, and you know, I couldn't tell you where, you know, we did look at various pools and numbers when we put this together. So when we threw out a 4, 5, and a 6 for the hundreds in terms of what those sizes of pools, but we also had a discussion, let's see how these work and see if we're going to have to tweak these. And lo and behold, through the pandemic, we've had several instances where people are looking at bigger pools. It could be that our number was just too small, or that the pool sizes are getting bigger. I'm not sure.
Hey,
Jody?
Carlos, if I remember the accessory structure discussion correctly, it was mostly related to a MU. We were trying to avoid people from putting in a MU on the side of their house instead of the back of their house with a shed.
What was that?
I mean, that's
Lean to?
the birdhouse. Do you remember that big
Birdhouse.
birdhouse on Ridgegate?
Yeah.
It was the MU. That was what drove, I think, the 400 square feet number. We were trying to avoid that in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We were trying to regulate so that doesn't happen again. And I think we've regulated other things out because of it. Not for the, I mean, for the people that are coming, you know, with variance requests, it's because, I think because of the 400 with the MU. That hasn't come up again. I mean, the guy moved out of Olivet and the MU went away. But we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to regulate that from happening again. If I
Right.
remember correctly. And I had just come on the board, I think, at the time.
Thanks, Jody. That's good. All right, well, I think we should all just kind of think about these things. You know, I do like the idea of seeing the table, so we're not kind of
Yep.
going through all this. It'd be easier to compare, you know, specific items one at a time. And kind of go from there. But these are great points everybody's making, so. All right, Carlos, are we going to talk about the stream buffer?
We're not going to talk about it, but I'll note that I did find 3 other communities that have provided some addition, you know, various options as compared to what the MSD standard was kind of laid out, which was 20 to 50 foot buffer with an additional 25-foot setback. For some of these communities here, Frontenac, Manchester, Brentwood, and Town and Country did change the process. And one of them just kind of throws it back to the commission to make those determinations when that additional setback is necessary in there. So I still want to kind of continue to review this. I think it's reasonable to provide a modification. Only for the purposes that if there is a natural stream, I fully believe that the MSD requirements are necessary and that the banks should be protected. But if it's not a natural stream, I think we're, you know, we have an obligation to ensure that the water going into that channel, that sediments are removed and things of that nature, but to protect the stream bank
Right,
when it's not natural, I think it's somewhat unnecessary.
right.
And again, it may be trying to craft something where there, you know, where there's some reasonable means to consider some exceptions outside of having to go to the Board of Adjustment. Because I think we put that burden on them, and you know, they're put in a situation to make a difficult decision
Right.
in there on the basis that they don't have much opportunity to review this, whether it's at a policy level or a bigger level.
Right.
So you have those, and it's just food for thought and to look over. I can email those out to you. If you prefer
You know,
to
that
have
would
them
be good
electronically.
too, just
Okay.
so we have a copy of it.
All right.
Good, good. Okay, so do we, and attorney questions?
Yes, we need to talk about that, and maybe we can move that to the 4th, and then I can have Paul maybe later, either the second meeting in November or December. Well, it's another thing we need to talk about dates. But we were going to talk to Mr. Martin specifically, and it kind of came up in tonight's discussion too about the community design review and under, you know, what are the parameters for denying an application. And that was going to be the primary question for him. Now, if we still want to try to coordinate with him for the 4th, which, you know, right now, the only petition item for review is if I get any revisions for this home on Hastings. But I've tried to keep that open so we can have the discussion on the stream buffer, stormwater, and then if Mr. Martin needed to be there.
And then I think we also had some other questions. I think Carol and I were talking about was, you know, the ability to have more workshops where we could kind of further discuss some of these things, especially for new members that are on board to kind of, you know, go back and forth and kind of, you know, do some education, you know, as well,
Yeah.
you know, in different things. And as well as sometimes where I think it's just worthwhile for us to have a chance to further discuss some of these, you know, items, you know, kind of discuss some potential impacts that whether we know or not, you know, sometimes it's difficult to do that in the open settings. I mean, I know we need to deliberate in open settings, but I think there's sometimes it's easier to ask questions about things when you have the potential for a closed door session. Does that
All right.
make sense?
So I would urge, like, if there is, and I can work with Carol, if you don't mind, if we can compose some questions by early next week and then give him an opportunity, and then I'll ask him to reserve the 4th.
Yeah.
To come in. And that's depending on that, he's got the availability on his schedule on that. But I did give him a heads up, but that we would give him some guidance of what exactly we're going to talk about.
Good, good.
Assuming we do get provisions, if you could.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, meeting minutes, I don't see any.
No
so-
minutes for tonight.
So we'll move on to reports.
All right. The big question regarding the reports, at least for me, is our meeting schedule in December the 2nd. Our first meeting is December 2nd, and it's the 5th night of Hanukkah. And out of respect, just asking, do I need to inform petitioners if we have to do any rescheduling or?
I think we have to reschedule that, don't we, for Hanukkah? No?
No,
Not for me.
not
Okay.
for me.
There you go.
I need to know. It's in the past, it's been. So.
You just need to bring us all presents.
Minor.
holiday.
All right, so we'll continue with so our schedules for November are the 4th and the 18th. And then for December, we'll have the 2nd and the 16th. Okay. Council, of course, has this work session on the first Tuesdays. They do have a scheduled meeting next week. for their regular meetings, and I believe they're going over some of the bond issues for refinancing on the city hall property bonds, and then and some discussions with Public Works regarding some of the community improvements on the Public Works grounds. I'm not sure, right? I think there are some, I'm not sure if it's with the Salt Dome or one of the other projects that Mr. McGregor's working on. I think there's some Public Works items that the commission's be reviewing that night. Okay. Pending petitions, we have a 3-lot subdivision plat on Dolores. I have another 3-lot subdivision plat on Kenneth. Those are all being reviewed administratively. I had the final plat document submitted for Birdie Lane for the city's signatures and recording. That will make those properties official. And they'll no longer be part of the preliminary process. Regarding city events, Wednesday they had coffee with the mayor. We had the director of the St. Louis Housing Authority in attendance. So it was a pretty interesting discussion. It is online. Urge you, if you get an opportunity to listen. Olivet does have public housing in our community. It's off of Rothwell Heights. There are, I believe, 8 units that are built that the city owns, but St. Louis County Housing Authority operates on our behalf. And I think we're one of 5 communities in the St. Louis County region in which the St. Louis County Housing Authority partners with us. So it was a pretty interesting, and it's good to know what their mission and objectives are and how we kind of collaborate and work together. October 23rd, I believe this Saturday is Drug Take Back Day. So there'll be an opportunity to drop off prescription drugs here at the community, at the city center. The fall leaf curbside collection schedules online. I don't have the exact dates with me. And then I believe Saturday, November 13th is the big dig. That would be the groundbreaking for the new community center off of Warson Park. So, and that also would include the Great Rivers Greenway Centennial Trail, the extension from Warson to Dealman. It showed you the developments. The guys have been really busy. We have Old Bonham Elementary, the Oliver. They're looking at probably a March, April opening. Plant Haven Commercial Center, you know, it's like one Monday it sprouted, you know, like a plant over time. So it's been pretty impressive. Yeah. Firestone, they finally did the concrete pour yesterday, I think it was. So now we'll start seeing the framing and the third dimension starting to come up, and that should move pretty quickly. I don't think they're going to be opening by November. So that'd be pretty close.
Carlos, what do you mean by new ownership of that?
Of which one?
Of Firestone?
Right now, it's still by GB Realty, I think is the name of the company.
Okay.
Olive Crossing, they submitted their improvement plans for lot 4 and the footing and foundation plans for the garage component of lot 4. So that's the residential garage. Those are under staff review. That's going to take a while to go through. And we anticipate that the full building for lot 4 will be applied for within the next 2 weeks. So that should start moving. The Opus Group has submitted their site improvement plans for the Irvington Rhyme area, and those are under staff review. They can't submit for the demolition or disconnections yet until they own the properties. That is scheduled to happen by November 29th. The ownerships should fully fall under the Opus Group. And so we're looking forward to that. No news on Easy Storage to provide. And the same thing with on the U City side. It's an amazing amount of dirt that's been shifted. And I'm not sure some of that dirt's just going to hold and sit there on the south side for a while, because that mountain's higher than the mountain it started off with. So that's been pretty impressive to see. And if you ever drive through there at night, it's pretty well lit up as they've been working, moving dirt across the road. So that's been interesting to see, and a lot of activity. in there. So I think that's all I have. I'd be glad to answer any questions, if there's any comments or inquiries.
Any questions? No? Missy?
Thank you very much. Yes, U City gave the contractor 40 days, 24 hours a day, which is why you're seeing things happening very fast in University City. Some good news that was reported by the city manager was that we did receive and get awarded a municipal park grant for $360,000. It will cover
Wow.
improvements at Villa Park.
Right.
The award agreement will come before the council once it's been received. And that's good news. Continuing with the park improvements, the city held their first construction meeting this week. And all seems to be moving ahead in a good direction. Please expect to begin to see equipment arriving and demolition of the old park house coming soon. It has been cleared out and all utilities have been shut off from the park home that was off up in the hill off of Warson. So that's all very, very good news. It's all exciting. As we all know, there is one council vacancy. The city is currently taking applications coming in for that position. If I could just bear with me 1 minute. November 13th will be the groundbreaking ceremony for the 5 parks in the new community center. Right now, I think we're looking at a potential of a 1 o'clock groundbreaking, but I haven't heard the confirmation of that time yet. So there are factors that they know that certain council members will not be able to participate if it is done after 1 p.m. So keep your ears and eyes open for that. And yes, the park crew did remove all equipment and supplies that are out of the park house. And it's just going to really be a very, very, very exciting time for the city. There are other things that are coming forward that will show that we are a community that is positive with regard to good development, good housing, and it's just an exciting time. We've accomplished a lot, guys, and in the last 17 years. We will be going back to looking at our comprehensive plan and any upgrades to that. And that will be the next big task for the city council down the road. With that, I cannot recall anything else that is of importance other than to again express my appreciation for all of you and the work that you do.
Missy, is the groundbreaking going to be at Warson Park or is it going to be at one of the?
My understanding is the groundbreaking is going to be where the Saints skating rink site used to be. Okay, and tonight we did have our additional redo of the Olivet Boo Bash Harvest Festival, and they were showing Hocus Pocus. There were kids out there tonight before I came here, so Mr. Spiegel asked there. The kids were having fun. So again, whatever department we have here in the city, whether it be from parks to planning to public works, it's all good. And yes, our guy Bruce McGregor is very happy that he's finally getting his salt covering, and we will no longer be in non-compliance with the EPA and environmental concerns. So it's all really good, and it really boils down to the leadership from the city manager down to the employees and the ability for us to make decisions that are good ones for our community. So that's it.
Great overview, great update. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, we'll adjourn at 9:44.
Thank you all.